Hello, everybody. Welcome to another video on Python for Linguists. This one is about writing to files. It's the sister video to the previous one, reading from files. As always, there will be code examples and exercises where you are asked to code along. So be ready to do that. Be ready to pause the video and sort of interact with it. Let's jump in. We have, in the last video, found out something about Shakespeare, namely the mean word length in all of his writing combined. Typically, we want to remember such a finding, maybe even share it with the world, maybe do some further statistics with it. Maybe we do this with Shakespeare and a couple of other authors. So we want to store it, save it somewhere, right? Time to get it out of Python and into a text file, because if we while we're working just in the shell, if we close that shell, that information is gone. And this is a very simple command. P, once again, a variable name is assigned, and then something we're familiar with, open, path to new file. And the only thing that's changed here is the second argument. Instead of an R for read, we have a W, and you can take a guess at what that means. It's a write file, right? And then with a file that's opened in this with this flag, we can then write to that file, and that's simply achieved by doing p.write and then a string in in the parenthetical argument here. All of this is just one big string. So we'd write something mean word length in Shakespeare's writing, colon, space. This is an actual string, and then plus string, a string version of the word count, numerical word count, float word count we calculated. But under the hood, this all just gets evaluated to one big string, right? So we write a string, a sequence of characters, to our text file. That makes sense. That's awesome. If you try to do that, and please code along right away, note that you can create this new file. This actually should be a new file and not something that already exists. Otherwise, you're in for an unpleasant surprise. But basically, you're going to create this file with this command and then execute this write command. If you then find the file on your computer and open it with a text editor, chances are it's going to be empty. Think about why that is. If you watched the last video carefully, you might have a hypothesis. But take a bit of time to do all of this, right? So figure out a path to your new file. The path itself needs to exist, all of the directories basically, and then the new file, if it already exists, it essentially gets overwritten by this command. So make it something that doesn't already exist, and execute these two commands. If you don't have this value saved, that's not essential right now. You can either make up a value or just write anything really in this statement. The key point is that it's probably not going to show up in the write file yet, because remember to always be closing. The following should fix this. If you then do p.close, that should wrap up the write operation and make sure everything that's written to file, even the last line, is actually it's actually safe to it, right? The write operation itself is only complete when the write file is properly closed. Just another reminder of how important it is to always be closing files. Next thing I want to talk about, I already kind of foreshadowed this, saying that if we create this file with the W option and you already have that file existing somewhere, it's going to get overwritten, right? And sometimes that's not what we want. Sometimes we want a file that we write something to, and then maybe we want to close it and later on, as data come in, for example, add further lines, further information to it. So we need a different method than the W option, right? So assuming we opened the same write file as before, and we wanted to add the information, this calculation was done on a certain date, and then close it. What you will see is that the sequence of commands has erased your previous file, and you've created an altogether new file with this single line, and that's all that's left. So we need to fix that, and the solution is the A flag instead of the W, and that's for append. So append to a file opens it, puts Python in, points Python to the current end of the file, but keeps the file open for writing at, to the file at this current end of the file. So we're not losing anything. We add new stuff to it. Open the file, simply start adding instead of overwriting it. In actual practice, but this may depend on preference as well. I find myself usually using W and being explicit about opening and closing and, um, and working that way, but that's you can definitely think of scenarios in which either append or write are the more appropriate choice, and it's definitely useful to know both of them. Let's practice a little bit. I'm going to keep this video relatively short. You probably lost the original content of your file when you just did that because you've overwritten it. So recreate it. No need to retype a lot. If you already kind of did all of these commands, you can use the arrow keys in your live shell to retrace them. And then create the original file, close it, make sure it's saved, and then reopen it in append mode and add the line. This calculation was done on whatever date you're currently working on it, and then open the file to make sure you've kept both the original line containing the info about mean word length and the appended one about the date. And once again, if something looks like there isn't everything there, always check whether you've actually closed after each of the relevant write operations. Okay, and moving on, a final piece of info I want to establish in this video is the choice of with open as variable as a sort of way of structuring your code that automatically forces you to close files once you're done with code. This is really helpful in avoiding the unclosed files issue. And essentially, it establishes this hierarchical structure with open path to file right as P. That's the same basically as saying P equals open path to file W, except it's not a standalone line, but it achieves this and then sort of has a hierarchically nested bit of code. This could be just this one line, or it could be more lines. And once this indented part of code is over, Python automatically closes the file. And that's really helpful. A lot of people who work on more complex code basically say this is the only way you should ever open a file is with this with statement, because it simply avoids the relatively easy to make and potentially extremely consequential error of not closing files, right? So basically, as soon as the commands under the scope of the with statement here are all executed and we leave the indented block, essentially, the file closes automatically. Very helpful. It sometimes gets a bit tedious if you have multiple files open. So read and a write file, and then if you have code where you need to restructure bits, like the indentation can sometimes get annoying. But that's really a matter of writing the code in a way that this doesn't get in the way. It really is the default, should be the default option to work with the with open as structure here. And basically that's all the new content. I want to focus in this video a bit more heavily on you doing something with the content. So here's a relatively high level task. Once again, we'll look at Shakespeare Complete Works, open it in reading mode, and also open a new file for writing results to, and then go over each line in Shakespeare with a for loop. So for line in F, right, where you do something for every line. Keep track of what line number you're on, count how many words are in that line, and write both the line number and the word count to the new results file. And once all of this is done, check your results file and see whether it makes sense, whether its structure is the way you want it. Not a lot of pointers here, but all of this can be achieved relatively easily with everything we know so far. I mean, it's only relatively easy once you know what the solution is, but for that, fear not. You can scroll down here and you'll find a bit of structured and commented code that that helps you if you're lost on this. That'll conclude the video. So this is more about you coding than me giving a lot of new input. Hope you get something out of it, and we'll talk about this more in the videos to come. Here's an image of a guy writing or reading with a snake, which kind of fits the topic, and it's a cool medieval picture. So check it out. Image credits are here, the link to the HTML slides and the QR code for these. And as always, this is also going to be available as part of the video description on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. See you for the next video.